For what purpose the gentleman from Union, Representative Art Price?
To debate the override.
The gentleman has the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, I really appreciate the debate. I was sitting back and listening, and I think I understand what the confusion is. Listen to Representative Smith and Representative Galliard talk about maybe we can hire people to, sheriff's deputies or active law enforcement. If you're a small church, you may not have that option. A wise person told me once, to read the bill that we're debating, because the bill doesn't match the debate that we've been talking about. Let me start off and let me read you the bill. It says, allow handguns on religious properties with a school. What we're talking about are churches with school functions on their property are disallowed. And so Representative Galliard said that can already happen. Look at Wednesday night services and Sunday services, except for these churches who have, during the day, school functions are not permitted to have handguns on there like other churches. That's the reason for this whole bill. And it's not started for a political purpose. It was come out of a need that Representative Turner, who's not even with us any longer, that's how long has been working on this, is to correct that loophole that other churches enjoy. That if they choose to allow concealed weapons on their property, they can do so. If they don't, they simply post a notice. But that is not available to churches who also have a school function on there. And that is exactly. Let me read for you the bill. It says here, allow handguns on religious property with a school. It says, number 2, the educational property is location of both a school and a building that is defined as a place of worship. And the weapon is a handgun. 4, the handgun is only possessed and carried on educational property outside of the non-public school operating hours. A non-public school operating hours are the times when curricular or extracurricular activities are taking place on the premises, and at any time when the premises are being used for school-sponsored activities. So this bill already bifurcates the school functions and disallows carrying weapons during those times. And when it's religious times, events, it allows the same protections that other churches enjoy. Number 5. The person or persons in legal possession or control of the premise have not posted a conspicuous notice prohibiting the carrying of a concealed handgun on the premise. So churches are still in control. But I think there's a misconception about what we're talking about here. These churches do not have that right to carry simply because they have a school function. Now, 12 of my colleagues have voted for this bill the first time it came through. I appreciate the bipartisan. This is a common sense bill. I don't think, I'm not as cynical in thinking that this is politicized at this point. It really is about that. And to say that churches are not at risk is a myth. As early as of December, the end of December in 2019, there was a tragic shooting. From Charleston to Texas, churches are still at risk. 2019, December, a gunman entered a church in Texas, shot 2 of the church's security teams before being killed by another member who was a retired reserve deputy sheriff and stop further killings. However, if you hire a person, a sheriff's deputy, active, you can have those people there, but the moment that that person retires, they can no longer volunteer for their churches. And I don't know about you, but my church, the volunteers are the lifeblood of my church. And the volunteers, we have more volunteers than money. And what happens is you have disafforded the opportunity to these churches to protect themselves and to simply say, churches are not at risk. Churches are more at risk, unfortunately, than at every time before in my life. So what I would ask is what Representative Gaillard actually described is what this bill does. Is during times of school, there's no weapons carried on the religious properties with a school function. However, during those times when their schools are not in session, it's up to the churches to decide, and this is a very common sense bill. The rest of the bill does some very interesting things. It allows certain law enforcement facility employees to carry weapons as well during it. So anyway, I just wanted to point out the fact that it should read the bill about what's going on. 12 of my colleagues have voted for it before. It's still the same bill. And I would urge you to really, let's not mix up what this bill really is about. And make sure we understand it. And I'd ask for you to still vote to allow this bill to come law because it's a common sense approach to protecting churches. Thank you.
For what purpose, gentleman from Catawba, Representative Adams rise?
Debate the motion a second time.
Gentleman has the floor.
The governor's reasoning for override has to do with the fact that he's concerned about schools and guns. And this is really not about schools. This is about churches and guns. However, I presume that his concern about schools and guns with regard to this bill is that a gun might be left behind at a church facility that is later used for a school. Now, I would submit to you that in all likelihood, a youngster would have a far greater probability of getting his hands on a firearm at home than he would at a church school. But let's look at some statistics. And this is from the North Carolina Violent Death Reporting System. When we look at, and this most recent data is from 2017, when we look at the number of deaths ages 5 through 9 from accidental firearms, the number is 1. Ages 10 through 14, the number is 0. Ages 15 through 19, the number is 2. So for a total of 3 accidental deaths by firearms statewide in 2017. So if that's the issue, it's the statistical probability of this happening at a church school is extremely low. Now, about the Wild West argument. If a church or a facility of any type is posted no firearms, the bad actor knows that law-abiding citizens won't have firearms there. If the facility is not posted at all, he may suppose that there are no firearms there. But if you allow concealed carry at a facility, even though no one has a weapon there, he knows someone might. And it changes his calculation. And that is what we call deterrence. And that's what this is about. This is not about arming people. It's not necessarily about guns being at the church. It's about changing the calculation of a bad actor. And it works. Statistically, it's very clear that it works. I could give you all kinds of information about that. But I'm just saying to you folks, this has been around for a while. It was mentioned that this This bill was filed some years ago. We are in a time of rather unusual duress in our society. People are frightened. As far as factually, do ministers want this? Well, I can think of three. I can think of three that I know personally who strongly would like to have the ability to at least say that concealed carry is available at their churches, but they have school facilities not used during the church times, and they can't allow it. So I want you to think about this. I hope you will. And I hope 7 of you guys will come along with us. This is a good thing. Thank you.
What purpose, the gentleman from Caldwell, Representative Hall, rise.
To debate the motion.
Gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I didn't plan to speak on this bill today, but I guess it's the lawyer in me. After listening to the debate, I felt compelled to speak on it because I think we need to clarify what the issue actually is in this bill and what the facts actually are. Because it's apparent that a lot of the members debating the bill had not read it, or at least they hadn't done it thoroughly. And if you look at it, it's the operative part of this bill is less than 1 page. And it makes it clear that we're only talking about outside school hours. Simple as that. The bill does not apply when school is in session. It specifically exempts that. This bill is about churches. And a church who has an educational institution on their campus, but it only applies during non-school hours. It's as simple as that. It seeks to make a church that's on an educational campus or a church that has an education component to it to be put on equal ground as all the other churches in our state, because they can already have concealed carry inside the building. Puts them on the same ground. So now that that's cleared up, the other thing that I think we need to clarify is some math. Because if you look at this bill when it came through the first time, 12 of my friends on the other side of the aisle voted in favor of it. If you look at the numbers here today, as I understand it, we need 69 votes to override this veto today. I think we've got 60 folks over here on our side of the aisle, and I think just, if not all, just about all 12 of my friends on the other side who agree with me on this bill. And I'm sure y'all still agree with me on this bill because nothing substantively has changed. You voted for it previously. And so here's what it comes down to today. This is not like these other bills we've been voting on where, unless some of my friends on the other side had a change of heart since last time, it's going to fail. Nope. This bill is going to pass today. The override is going to happen today so long as all the folks over here on this side vote the same way they did before, and I expect they will, and so long as my friends on the other side who voted for it previously vote in favor of it, we're going to override. And so for my 12 friends on the other side who voted in favor of it previously, my question is, what's changed? And what you've got to decide here in a moment is whether you're going to allow Governor Cooper to tell you how to vote, or whether you're going to stay consistent and vote on a bill that hasn't changed at all, that you voted in favor of, to put all churches on equal ground in North Carolina. For those of you who change on this vote, good luck to you explaining that to your voters. Because I'm up here for the folks in my district. And I don't care who the governor is. He doesn't tell me how to vote. I hope you'll vote in favor of the motion.
For what purpose, the gentleman from Cumberland, Representative Floyd, rise.
Mr. Speaker, to see if the Rules Chair or the Majority Leader will yield for a question.
Representative Lewis, the gentleman yield to a question. Shoot.
Mr. Rules Chair, I think that everything that has been said, and I think that the Speaker will not allow me to make a motion. So at this particular time, I plead upon you to do that, sir.
Mr. Speaker, may I offer a motion?
Gentleman's recognized for a motion.
I move the previous question.
Gentleman's moved the previous question on House Bill 652. Those in favor of the motion will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no. Clerk will open the vote. Fisher, no. Autry, no. Clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. 67 having voted in the affirmative, 47 in the negative. The previous question is adopted. There is not an opportunity for rebuttal time on this being an override question. Therefore, the question before the body is the motion that House Bill 652 become law, notwithstanding the objections of the governor, and the veto therefore overridden. All those in favor will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no. Clerk will open the vote. Fisher, no. Autry, no. Representative Russell, care to vote on the bill? Clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. 66 having voted in the affirmative, 48 in the negative. The motion fails. The Senate will be so notified. House Bill 806, the clerk will read.
Representative Sane and Strickland, House Bill 806, open exercise and fitness facilities, General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
The gentleman from Lincoln, Representative Sane. Representative Sane, recognized for a motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House pass House Bill 806, open exercise and fitness facilities, notwithstanding the objections of the governor.
The gentleman has moved that House Bill 806 become law, notwithstanding the objections of the governor and the veto overridden. The gentleman has the floor to debate the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First of all, this bill that you have before you today was a redo. We had good debate about this on the floor. The other side that was in opposition pointed out some of the issues that they thought would make this bill something that they couldn't support. We went back in conference, it was on June 26th, took that language that everyone said they agreed with, or at least a majority of the body at that time said they agreed with, and we put it back into this conference report in 806. And the vote on June 26th was 75 to 31, and we had 14 people absent, clearly enough for a veto override. This is a rational and pragmatic approach. Again, it comes from listening to those that were initially in opposition. And it is a plan. Not only does it address the physical health of our citizens, but it also addresses mental health issues too, as many folks are really cannot wait to get back into either a indoor or outdoor exercise facility, gyms, health clubs, and fitness centers. They just want to get back into a somewhat normal way of going about their business. A lot of folks need that physical therapy and other issues that they're used to getting. So the bill is very simple. Here's what the bill does. It's the establishment, it looks at the establishments, and it allows them a total indoor capacity that is limited to 40%. All employees answer a health questionnaire, and their temperature is taken daily prior to work. All employees wear face masks except when actively leading a group fitness class or when outdoors and socially distanced. All members and visitors are strongly encouraged to wear face masks. It gives us a prescription for even HVAC standards as gyms open up. Sanitation spray bottles with disinfectant or disinfectant wipes are required, and that they be available throughout the establishment. Hand sanitizer stations are available throughout the establishment. Also gives employees instructions on a 24-hour facility or whatever hours they're open as far as routine cleanings of equipment and so forth. Also gives some prescriptions for cardiovascular and weight training equipment, that it's used in a manner to ensure social distancing of at least 6 feet. The bill goes on, rules for studio and group fitness classes. It also puts some restrictions and prescriptions on if you have on-premise child care, how we'd go about that. So the bill's pretty simple. We got a great vote. Again, it was 75 to 31. We changed the language to address those issues that folks had pointed out and allowed them to support the bill. We had a great vote on it. I think this is, again, a very pragmatic approach to this issue. We've all agreed upon it. I just urge you to support the veto override. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For what purpose, gentleman from Orange, Representative Meyer, rise.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to ask for a moment of personal privilege and then the ability to debate the bill.
Gentleman has the floor for both purposes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Colleagues, I just want to use a moment of personal privilege to thank all of you who reached out to me to ask about the health of my daughter after her COVID diagnosis. I'm very pleased to say that she is now COVID negative, and I was able to see her for the first time in about a month this weekend for my birthday, which was fantastic. Thank you. I do want to warn you, though, that what I have learned from having Ashley go through this is that this is no flu. This is a serious respiratory illness, and Ashley has some kind of lasting lung damage from it that we're not sure what that is. Hopefully it's temporary, but from the doctors that we've talked with, it's just not clear with COVID how long the lung damage that people have lasts. She's 28 years old, young enough to hopefully overcome some of it. But I've been trying to explain to people who have asked me about her to say that this is more serious than just a common flu. And I just think it's important for those who don't know anyone who's had it that you understand how real and lasting the impact is. I wish I could say that she's young, she survived it, and now everything's going to be okay. But I'm glad she's COVID negative and able to get back to work and able to be with her family. I continue to be worried about her and anyone else that has those lingering effects. And Mr. Speaker, if I may continue to speak to the motion.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you again, colleagues, for your support on that. I want to ask us, as we take up this motion and vote on this motion, to actually look ahead past today's veto overrides. My guess is that we're probably going to sustain these vetoes today, and we're in a win-lose position, battle between the legislature and the governor, or between the Republican Party and the Democratic Party, where when it comes down to votes like this, there's a winner and a loser. But on COVID right now, there's no winners. There's no winners on health care, and there's no winners in the economy, and there's no winners in government, because we're all struggling to know how to address something like this. And I did read one article last week that made me, for the first time, think that maybe there is a way through this where we can all work together and figure out a frame that is different than the do we reopen or do we stay closed argument, which is also, to me, a winners and losers argument. And the concept that was introduced was the idea of a virus exposure budget. And just like your household budget, you've got enough money to spend money on prioritize some things, but it means you can't spend money. You have to deprioritize some other things. And it pushed us to think in public health policy to recognize that until we have a vaccine, we're not going to be able to just keep everything shut down, but we're also not going to be able to open everything up. That somehow we have to figure out, if we're going to have limited exposure for our residents, who is it that we are okay with exposing? What do we want to prioritize in terms of opening? And in exchange for opening some things, we're going to have to keep other things closed in order to limit our exposure budget. Now, I would say, and you can disagree with me, and maybe you think gym should be the first priority of what we would open in our budget, but I would say that schools would be the first thing that we should open. I think getting our kids back to school for their good and for the good of their parents to be able to go back to work is the number one thing we should do. But if we do that, if we spend our COVID exposure budget on schools, then we're going to have to not spend that budget on something else, like gyms. And I hate that for the gym owners, and I hate that for my own physical health and ability to work out in a gym. But until we have a virus, I think that concept of a budget may be the place where we can have more back and forth and figure out, what are we going to prioritize? Where do we go? How do we help the people of North Carolina make it through this until the vaccine is here? and we can move on to whatever our new status is. Thank you, colleagues.
Further discussion, further debate. For what purpose, the gentleman from Wake, Representative Jackson Rice.
Speak on the gentleman's motion.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm hesitant to speak after Representative Myers. That was great remarks, but I've heard it mentioned in the last debate, and I've heard it mentioned again today about prior votes and things. And so I think it's important that we talk about what has changed since June 25th. You know, as policy decision makers, decisions we make have real-world consequences and even sometimes life and death. And as facts change, I hope we change our opinions. I hope we are not wedded to our partisan views so much that we don't recognize that when facts have changed. Today, we have more cases than we had on June 25th. We have 1,435 new COVID diagnosis cases today. We have more hospitalizations. We're now up to 994, a new record today, and the 5th record in the last week. We have 21 more deaths. We're now at 1,441, and in another week or two, we're going to pass more deaths for COVID than we've had in the last 11 years total for the flu. Just last night, I looked it up, and as of 9 p.m. on the Johns Hopkins website, there were 58,146 new coronavirus positive cases as of 9 p.m. And I hear a lot of people say, well, yeah, but that's Arizona, or that's Texas, that's South Carolina, and that's Georgia. And those are states that were full speed ahead, and they reopened. And unfortunately, in my opinion, their citizens are now paying the price. On June 25th, we had 1,009 new cases that day. Since then, we are averaging 1,500 new cases a day. That's a 50% increase. 50% in less than 2 weeks. Again, we've set 5 different records for hospitalizations since the last vote. Some parts you might call at your part where you live, you might call your hospital and they might be doing just fine. But at others, they're at capacity. They're at diversion. They're already moving people to other hospitals. They're preparing for surge contingencies. But they still want you to come to the hospital if you're sick. And when I spoke to my local hospital about their numbers and everything, the one thing they wanted me to say is, if you're having heart pain or you feel like you're having a stroke, don't avoid the hospital. They want you to come in. And they're scared about that because there's a downside to people being scared to go to the hospital. So they want to keep the situation where they can handle every emergency, where they can treat everyone. And they want us to do our part. And whether that's wearing masks or opening up a little slowly, that helps. Our public health experts tell us that gyms and other indoor activities where people are exercising or breathing heavily are very risky activities. Representative Meyer talked about his budget. The Texas Medical Society or Association put out a flow chart this week. And what I've noticed on that is many of the things we're talking about reopening were in the red at the very bottom of the chart, the most risky situations. And I understand these businesses that feel left out of phase 2, but I ask you, what are we supposed to do? Just ignore the science? The best scientists in the world learn something new about this virus every single day. Should we tell them to quit studying it because we're not going to listen to what they come up with, that we don't need more facts or data, that what we knew about this virus or what we thought we knew in March and April is good enough? I say let's respect the science. Let's listen to these experts. Let's keep the riskiest activities closed. Since our vote a few weeks ago, we've enacted a mask wearing requirement. The science says that that will help. I'm hopeful in 3 or 4 weeks we will see that to be true. Since our vote a few weeks ago, gyms in many parts of the state many parts of the country have started to close back down. Some have closed because of new statewide bans, others because of city bans, and some gym owners have recognized the dangers to their clients and recognized that they can't make a profit with only a few people coming in every day. No state or city or county with a record number of hospitalizations and cases is reopening gyms right now. Nobody's even talking about it except North Carolina. Things are getting worse in this country, particularly in the Southeast. I know we all hope that with heat and humidity, we would be spared the worst of this and that we might not have a resurgent or a great number of cases until the fall. That is what I was hoping. But just a few miles to our south, look at South Carolina, where cases and deaths and hospitalizations are surging. The governor of West Virginia, a Republican, is warning his citizens to stop going to Myrtle Beach because they keep bringing COVID back to his state. Let's not get to that point. Let our beaches, let our businesses down there who are doing things the right way, let them continue to stay open. I know it's difficult for gym owners and other business owners who are not allowed to open. It's also difficult for those that are open and under reduced capacity or who are losing money because they have no customers. We can sit here and take votes to open each and every business here in North Carolina, but until we control this disease and rebuild consumer confidence, business activity will not come back. Those folks just aren't going to come back. I hope you've had a chance to look at some of the consumer confidence and the polling that's come out in the last few weeks that tell you how the people in North Carolina feel about this, because we talk often about that, about how our people back home. Well, according to the Elon University poll, 79% of our say that our current restrictions are about right or not strict enough. 63% are avoiding doing things they usually do. Public policy polling said 56% are comfortable going to gyms, but 28% are not. And the East Carolina poll said 62% think things are getting worse on the ground in the last 2 weeks. I don't believe the people in North Carolina want to reopen gyms today. They, like many of us, are sick and tired of talking about COVID. They just simply want it to magically go away. They're getting terribly sick. Some are dying or getting permanent damage. Jobs and businesses are lost. And the pain is unfortunately being felt by the most vulnerable and often ignored communities of our state. And yet, I think people want health experts to make these decisions and not politicians. Wear your mask, socially distance. Keep the riskiest businesses closed for now. That's how we turn this around. It's the only way to turn this around. It's the only way we get North Carolina back open and people back to work. So far, we avoided being Italy, and we avoided being New York. We can still avoid being Arizona, Texas, or Florida, but it's going to take us all working together to do it. I'd ask you to vote against the gentleman's motion.
Further discussion, further debate? If not, the question before the House is consideration of the motion that House Bill 806 become law notwithstanding the objections of the governor and the veto therefore overridden. All those in favor will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no. The clerk will open the vote. Fisher, no. Autry, no. Clerk will lock the machine, record the vote. 63 having voted in the affirmative and 51 in the negative. The motion fails. The Senate will be so notified. For what purpose, the gentleman from Wayne, Representative Smith, rise? House Bill 686. Clerk will read.
Representative Stevens, House Bill 686, freedom to celebrate the 4th of July, General Assembly of North Carolina enacts.
Lady from Surrey, Representative Stevens, recognized for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House pass House Bill 686, the freedom to celebrate the 4th of July, notwithstanding the objections of the governor. Wish to speak on the same.
Lady has moved House Bill 686 become law notwithstanding the objections of the governor and the veto therefore overridden. The lady is recognized to speak to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members of the House, I realize the 4th of July has passed at this point. And the 4th of July was a day of general thanksgiving and declaring our freedom from a king. It seems particularly important that we remember those freedoms and we remember trying to get away from a king. Governor Cooper has vetoed this bill, so why should we take it up now? Well, because by taking it up, most of us probably saw fireworks and parades and different gatherings that we did for the 4th of July, and by at least overriding this veto, we can preclude any criminal liability or civil liability for those people who did participate and for those people who did honor and respect the traditions of our 4th of July. So I'd ask you to vote with me to override the governor's veto.
For what purpose the lady from Wilson, Representative Farmer Butterfield, rise?
Point of personal privilege.
Okay. If there's no other debate, we may want to conclude this one vote and then I'll come back to the lady. Was that sufficient?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Okay.
I have another engagement. You know that.
I
Thank
do.
you.
The further discussion, further debate on the bill. If not, the question before the House is shall House Bill 686 become law, notwithstanding the objections of the governor, and therefore the veto overridden? All those in favor will vote aye. All those opposed will vote no. The clerk will open the vote. Fisher, no. Autry, no. Jarvis, aye. Is Representative Pittman on the floor? Clerk will lock the machine and record the vote. 58 having voted in the affirmative, 54 in the negative. The motion fails. The Senate will be so notified. The lady from Wilson, Representative Farmer Butterfield, is recognized to speak to a point of personal privilege.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Having submitted 3 representative statements with the clerk, I ask that they be read in their entirety upon adjournment and spread across the journal. And I would like to be recognized to speak on only one representative statement.
So ordered by the chair, and the lady is recognized to speak to a point of personal privilege.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Once upon a time, there was a little baby girl born in Wilson County. Her name was Sally Baldwin. Many years later, she became Mrs. Howard and dedicated her life to educating and serving the people of northeastern North Carolina. Affectionately known as Bibby, she overcame innumerable challenges growing up in the South at that time. Sally Baldwin Howard was driven, focused, and graduated as valedictorian from Charles H. Darden High School in 1938. She earned her bachelor's and master's degrees from Hunter College in New York City. She dedicated the early years of her career as a teacher in the New York City public schools system. While she was a teacher in New York, she was involved in the New York City American Negro Theater. She honed her love and proficiency for the arts during this time. Indeed, she found her voice in the arts. Upon her retirement, Sally B. Howard returned to the community where she was raised. She led the Christian Education Department at St. John AME Zion Church in Wilson. In 1989, she, along with Dr. Joanne Woodard, who's with us today, started the Youth Enrichment Program. This program focused on lasting scholarship and a fierce commitment to African American cultural heritage. Her love for the arts and her commitment to the community inspired her to create one of the first public charter schools in the state of North Carolina, the Sally B. Howard School of Arts and Education in Wilson, North Carolina. Her love for the arts and for education inspired thousands of students in Wilson. Sally B's legacy lives on in the lives of these young people. She was a trailblazer, an extraordinary woman with an extraordinary life, and was incredibly strong and a generous spirit. Unfortunately, she passed away in 2018. Today, we celebrate and honor Sally B. Howard. The blessings she bestowed on the Wilson community are graciously appreciated. May God bless the life and memory of an incredible, extraordinary human being, Sally B. Howard, who now belongs to the ages. I commend the resolution to you.
Members, on motion of Representative Farmer Butterfield, the chair is pleased to extend the courtesies of the gallery to a number of guests with us, and I would ask that they stand when we call their names. First, we have Dr. Joanne Woodard, who's the founder and executive director of the Sally B. Howard School for the Arts, Reverend Maurice Barnes, Miss Howard's adopted son and family member, and then we also have, I believe those are actually, that's both of them. We appreciate you all being here from Wilson County. Please, thank you. Join me in welcoming these folks with us. Members, for your planning purposes, well, let me take care of something first. Mr. Clerk, Chair directs House Bill 258 be removed from today's calendar, returned to the Committee on Rules, Calendar, and Operations of the House. For your planning purposes, the Chair does not anticipate, in fact, the Chair will, at this point, I believe those are the only two vetoes on the Senate calendar, overrides. We will not be receiving those today. So those who came here just for the overrides are probably safe to go other places if they would like. The Chair does believe that we may receive a bill back that may need on a concurrence vote. The Senate has passed. Mr. Clerk, could you tell the body what the other two bills the Senate has already passed? Or?
Members of the House, the Senate has passed Senate Bill 226, the House Committee Substitute, Senate Bill 232, and House Bill 1235.
So there are a few other bills that we passed over. The Chair is going to check to see the status of those, and pursuant to representations I made earlier to the body, it's an intention to have us out of here today. And so we're going to take a recess momentarily for the purpose of checking to see where we are and if we can expect to receive any bills that are going to need concurrence votes. But wanted to make sure folks knew that. For what purpose, the gentleman from Guilford, Representative Brotman, rise.
A moment of personal privilege.
The gentleman has the floor.
This weekend, July 5th, it was my seatmate's birthday. He is a great leader of our caucus and an even better friend. So I hope you help me wish him a happy birthday.
For what purpose, the gentleman from Cumberland, Representative Lucas, rise.
For a moment of personal privilege.
The gentleman has the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, many of you may be aware that Representative Floyd may soon be leaving us. It is with regret that I share with my friend that we're going to miss him for a while. I've known Representative Floyd for many years, known that he hails from Nash County, and that he has been very vigorous and tenacious in his service here. Representative Floyd believes very much in brevity when it comes to debate. And Representative Floyd really has tried to exemplify his prowess in human relations, and he really has not had an opportunity to really practice his quasi-skills in rules checking. He probably holds a record when it comes to inquiries to check. I'm not so sure of that. I don't know if there's been any challenge. But I think my data may be pretty accurate. Representative Floyd really will leave not having accomplished many things that he wished that he could have accomplished. We never did do his fried chicken deal. We will miss